Welcome. In this tutorial, let's have a look at conversation sessions and window-based memory. Conversation sessions, we use a chat ID for grouping history under unique identifier. Let me navigate to Visual Studio Code. This is simple pattern. We just extend an unique chat ID and all will be similar to previous example. Let me add one more request parameter, conversation ID. So we expect a conversation ID when this API is called. Let me remove this. Let me rename the API. We can also use logged in user session ID here as chat ID. In this pattern, we are just grouping the messages based on session identifier to keep the context isolated between different users or different topics. Here, conversation ID acts as a partition key for memory. If multiple users are trying to chat, then we can separate it out with the session identifier. Let's now look at the window-based pattern. This is also similar to previous example with one extra parameter where we expect a window size. One more parameter. Now we have to pass this window size to get method. The current get method in simple chat memory accepts only parameter, that is conversation ID. Let me copy paste this method and change it to accept limit. Let me apply a limit before returning the list of messages. List messages, and then if message size less than or equal to limit, then return the messages, else do a sublist and then return it. You can do this limit in the query itself. Let me go back to the memory controller. Now here we get only the window size number of messages, so that will be passed to the LLM and we get the response. In this case, if you are expecting a response which you passed long back to the LLM, there is a possibility of windowing drops old messages if the user asks something which he has sent to the API long back and that turn has been windowed out, LLM won't know about that context, so LLM might not return expected answer. Let's consider an window size 5 and you have stored 50 messages. The LLM only sees messages from number 46 to 50, still saved in DB but not sent to LLM. So what's the advantage of this window pattern compared to session pattern and the entire history pattern? This reduces the context we are sending to LLMs, which in turn reduces the cost. Here, when we are sending entire history, there is a chances of exceeding the context limit, and even in the session we may face situation of exceeding context, and if you are specifying a window, then there is very less chance of exceeding context limit. Let's look at one more pattern, that is summary memory. As we are losing initial context in the window as we drop out earlier messages, in the summary memory, what we do is we compress old messages into short summary instead of dropping them. The LLM retains the context without the token overhead. Let's define a get mapping. Let me rename this to summary. Let me remove this window size. Let me remove all this. Let's get the history. Let me define a string old context where we go through all the messages and stream it, map the message, map each message type, then concat with message get text, then collectors joining with new line character. So now we have all the old messages here. Let's send this to LLM to summarize this. Let me tweak this a little bit. Given the following conversation context, provide a concise summary in 2 or 3 sentences that captures the key points. What we are expecting from LLM is we are passing all the old history and expecting LLM to provide us a summarization in 2 or 3 sentences. Let's use chat client. Let's store it in a summary variable. Now we have the summary of old conversation history. Now let's add this history as system message. Chat memory, add new system message. Let's add this at the end of summarization so that we don't want to summarize the current message from the user. Let me remove this restriction of 2 3 sentences. Let LLM decide what's best for summarization. Before adding the summary to memory, I have to clear the chat existing memory, clear conversation ID. This is not defined yet. Now let's add the user message. Let's get the messages again and invoke the LLM. Once we get the response, we'll add that again to the database. It is an assistant message, not user message. Then return the response. Let's go through the code again. We rename this to summary. First, we get the messages stored in the database. We loop through it. Then we send that messages to LLM for summarization. Once we get the summary, we clear the existing database conversation messages. Then we add summarization as a system message. On top of it, we add new user message that we received here. Then we fetch the messages again from the database and we send that message to LLM, and the response we save it as assistant message and we return the response. Let's now test the APIs. Let me go to the first API, chat. We get the user message, we add it to the database table, we get all the chat history, we send to the LLM, then add that response to the database again. Okay, there is a wrong here. It should be assistant message. Let me look at other APIs as well. Yes, assistant message, system message, user message, assistant message. Let me build it. Spring Boot run. Let me bring up the terminal. Before that, let me go to the database, connect. We are making sure that no entries exist in the table. Let me bring up that Postman. Let me hit agent chat API with message. Remember, I like Italian food. Okay, I got the response. Let me look at the database table. Here are the 2 entries. Message type, user and the assistant. Let me hit the API with few more message parameters. Also, I prefer morning meetings. One more with message. Please keep that in mind for future suggestions. I am planning a team lunch next week. I am hitting this API with these multiple message parameter because I can use this in the next summary API to get the summary. The last one. Now let me see the database table. So we have conversation here, user assistant, user assistant, user assistant. Now let me hit the summary API with the message, what kind of food do you think I like? Also, if you remember the summary API, we have to send conversation ID. Let me get it from the database table. Let me hit the API. Okay, there is some error. Let's look at the logs. Okay, I got it. In the service, we have to add an annotation transactional because we are adding and deleting in the same API. We have to import it from the Spring Framework transaction annotation. Let me build this again. Run. As we are using in-memory database, all the records what we entered has gone. I will hit the API offline and will come back. Yes, now I have inserted all the data. Now let me hit the summary API. Chat summary with message, what kind of food do you think I like? And with the conversation ID. Based on our previous conversation, I think you like Italian food. Is that correct? So let me go back to the database table and have a look at the entries. So it cleared all our previous conversations and added a summary to it. When I sent what kind of food do you think I like? So it deleted all our previous conversations and created a summary. And when I asked the question based on the summary, it gave me this answer. So let's wrap this tutorial here. We'll see you in the next one.